So, dear colleagues, in the organization of this event, a regional perspective could not be avoided, as even in the virtual, we have to deal with time zones. So, communicating from Munich in Germany, we devised this year's IMMAA Topical Forum into a Western Hemisphere session now and for the next 1.5 hours, and an Eastern Hemisphere session tomorrow at 8 o'clock a.m. Central European Time. And I hope to meet at least some of you also tomorrow. In any case, with the consent of the speakers, we will enable asynchronous viewing on the IMMAA website, but give us a few days to make that happen. So this second topical forum continues last year's theme, media management in post-pandemic times. Sadly enough, in this question mark in post-pandemic is more justified than ever as we reach unseen levels of COVID-19, at least in some regions of Europe. In this year's topical forum, we want to ask, what of the experienced effects during COVID-19, the COVID-19 pandemic will remain, and what are the learnings that stay relevant? It's my pleasure and honor now to announce a fantastic lineup of scholars from IMMAA's Scientific Advisory Committee, plus a distinguished industry expert, namely Maria Elena Gutierrez and José Soto Galindo from Mexico, Francisco Perez Latre from Spain, Cristobal Benavides from Chile, and Ana Bizberge from Argentina. This first session of our second topical forum will be moderated by my dear board colleague, Mercedes Medina from Spain. So let's enjoy now diverse perspectives on the forum's theme. The floor is yours, Mercedes, and to the guest speakers. And I will leave the stage now to make place for the guests. Enjoy.
Thank you so much, Castulus. Thank you for organizing this second topical forum. It's really a pleasure to be here, being a part of the International Media Management Association. So we have to say good afternoon, Europe, good morning, America, and good night, Asia. So that's very, very exciting. So my role here is just to present the speakers and to control the time. We have among 10 and 15 minutes to talk, and then to open the conversation to the rest of the public and the audience. So let's go first to Mexico. Thank you, José. I have to tell that José is a journalist, is working on El Economista, and he's the data protection officer from the University of Guadalajara, Mexico, and the owner of the blog Economicon. His expertise comes from TIC and telecommunication law. Please, José, thank you very much. It's your turn.
Thank you, Mercedes. Gracias, Mercedes. I'm gonna share you a presentation, and I'm gonna read some lines I wrote for this meeting. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very honored by being here with you. Thank you. I'm going to share my presentation, and I'm going to read it. Thank you very much. Readers have the right to slap. An interpretation about the state of journalists in Mexico. Years ago, I read that readers have the right to slap. I read it in an old journalist book written by Journalist Post, but by the Post journalist, and published in the 70s. The phrase seemed very appropriate in a life without YouTube, near Facebook, or TikTok. But then the digital revolution came, and the phrase became more relevant, clear, and more precise. That's precisely what readers did. Slapped us as media companies and journalists. We lost focus on the social value of news. readers slapped us back. We stopped explaining, we stopped contextualizing, we stopped fact-checking. We have lost the human sense of journalism. Some media companies did due to efficient resources and maximizing benefits, others due to a loss of identity in the face of new platforms and new media players, and others due to ignorance of arrogance. In between those losses, we lost contact with the people we serve. I generalize for purposes of argumentative clarity, considering mainly the great news industry, because there are initiatives around the world that work with journalists, noble ideals, social service commitment, watchdog power, and giving voice to people without a voice. In this generalization, we have lost focus on the social value of news. And if that weren't enough, we put a layer of work stress on it to demand journalists to become business enablers. You can notice it in many forums where there is more reference to monetization and business models than to quality or the human sense of journalism. I'm not going to talk about the working conditions of some professionals, discredited by the public and corporate powers in an environment of fake news and post-truth stories, and in a hyper-dynamic and hyper-demanding sector, required to attend to issues that often have nothing to do with journalistic work. The new ecosystem is based on new communication personalities, not precisely journalists, with different codes from the traditional ones, distributed by platforms and technological systems usually managed by third parties. Many of us who migrated from analog to digital tend to analyze this phenomena with the tools of the past, without understanding that we are facing something totally new in an unknown and of unknown consequences. But if there is something that remains, it's that journalism is a public service and must be carried out with human, explanatory, fact-checked, and contextual ways. It is the main work of our trade, and it is the key to overcome adversity and regain trust and regain a place in our communities. I started with the bad news, perhaps motivated by my professional training, but I did it with the intention of supporting a forward-looking conclusion that I'm advancing right now. There is room for reinvention if we listen to our readers again, if we attend to their information needs, and if we think journalism as a public service. Chapter 1. We broke off contact with our community. Years ago, we broke off communication with the people we serve. At the same time, those people embrace other formats for content and other genres of content. In my opinion, that loss of communication generated two major problems. One, we stopped explaining the reality to our readers. We broke off contact with what interests our communities, and that took its toll on us with the distancing with news consumers and a loss of confidence in our work as journalists. Our readers slapped us. We stopped being the college of those who never went to school. As the Dean of Cultural Journalism in Mexico, Fernando Benitez, used to say. You must understand that I live in a poor country. OECD estimates that 8 out of 10 Mexican adults do not have higher education studies. The pandemic caused almost 1 million people to join the group with educational social deprivation between 2020 and 2021. At best, we became the newspaper denounced by David Simon, journalist and creator of the television series The Wire. I quote David Simon. Baltimore's surviving newspaper spent the last 2 decades reducing its staff and content and concentrating its remaining resources on the petty frauds of impact journalism and the journalistic price culture. They actually did abandon comprehensive coverage of the city and now miss nearly every story that actually matters to the life of Baltimore. Instead of doing journalism that helps to understand our communities and our worlds, or to change people's lives, we did everything to break off with our community. We stopped humanizing, explaining, contextualizing, fact-checking. We turn our readers into audiences, into market segments, and never into a community. Not everything is lost. There are plenty of possibilities to reveal and do things with quality, transparency, and honesty to regain confidence. Chapter 2. Readers decided to spend their money better, differently. The average salary in Mexico is $230 per month. The truth is that these figures leave little margin for consumers to spend their money and narrow the target markets of many business initiatives, even those that we would like to consider essential, such as acquiring information services. According to data from the consulting firm PwC Mexico, the pandemic had some major implications in the media and entertainment industry. 1. Restrictions on mobility to prevent the spread of coronavirus disease reduced the revenues of the industry in general by 8% in 2020. The recovery is projected as a V-shaped, but it will be hardly enough to exceed what was registered in 2018. Content consumption in face-to-face environments or in public spaces practically disappeared, while the activities that can be carried out at home or indoors increased substantially, such as streaming video or video games consumption. 3. OTT services won pandemic, with a 24% growth in the value of their business in 2020. Victims of their own success, companies such as Netflix or Disney Plus now face the challenge of the economic capacity of Mexican consumers to subscribe to their services, what the experts call share of wallet. Chapter 3. Digital means Google and Facebook. Everything else is e-commerce. Digital channel became the one that captures the highest advertising investment. It surpassed television, the Mexican king of formats. And it was a confirmation that consumption has migrated from screens. Advertising investment in digital channels represents almost half of the total, while television has 33% share. What remains is distributed by radio, out-of-home advertising, newspapers, printed magazines, and other channels. This allowed me to stop at the newspaper business. In general terms, the digital business of newspapers, circulations, and advertisings grows at 12% rate. It seems like a very good, a double-digit rate, but at that rate, it will take about 3 decades to reach the volume of the traditional business and become a backbone that can sustain the entire business. Chapter 4. News consumers are disappearing. The ecosystem is changing and it is creating an ever-widening gap between an informed society and a society less interested in politics and citizenship, mobilized by the understanding of the public arena. News consumption has failed regardless the platform. Digital channels, social network, television, and print have lost relevance as news sources. It's a serious problem, adding to the certainty that readers are disappearing at a rate that soon there will be no one left. Those who remain for the moment, however, are more interested in entertainment than in general politics, in general culture of politics and public life. We must take action. I'm talking about consumer habits and the audience's interest. This is a consequence, I said before, of our growing disconnection from our communities, of our failure of dialogue. And along the way, we fail to do something very important for any industry. Train new readers, train new consumers, such as drug dealers do when they need to engage new addicts. Although this may be a politically incorrect example. But precisely because of this, I believe that we can change the future. We can make the foundation for something different if we shake off our arrogance, if we look back at our communities and walk with them in a conversation, the basic of a journalistic job. Chapter 5. Accept the slap for what we stopped doing and let's build a promising future. I am a closet optimist and I am hopeful. I believe we can change things for the good of journalists, for the good of business, and for the good of our societies. 1. Given the loss of confidence, readers' reduction and loss of cognitive abilities, my proposal is to humanize, explain, contextualize, and fact-check. Faced with the competition between the news social value and its economic value, my proposal is to look out for our communities, to stop seeing them as audiences, as market segments, and to accompany them and attend their information needs. 3. Faced with a new media ecosystem dominated by platforms and new business models, my proposal is for quality that builds trust. We need to recover our readers based on transparency, social responsibility, and integrity. We must take action because it is clear that soon there will be no readers who slap. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jose. Very, very interesting and very provoking speech. Let's go to Ana from Argentina. Ana Bizberge is a specialist in cultural industries. She works at the University Nacional General San Martín, and she teaches also in the University of Buenos Aires. Ana, if you are around. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, it's nice to see you all. Okay, so good afternoon. As Mercedes said, my name is Ana Bizberge. I'm from Universidad de Buenos Aires and Universidad Nacional de Quilmes in Argentina, and I recently joined the IMMAA as a member of the advisory committee. So it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to present this work with you. What I'm presenting here are the results of an exploratory research that I developed with my colleague María Soledad Segura. She is from the Universidad Nacional de Córdoba, also in Argentina. We analyzed measures adopted by different actors that affected digital rights, more specifically freedom of expression, access, and privacy during the first 6 months of COVID-19 pandemic, that is March to August of 2020 in 3 Latin American countries, Argentina, Brazil, and Mexico. We decided to work with these countries because of its importance in terms of political and economic influence in the whole region, and because their governments have different political orientations, right-wing in Brazil and progressive from traditional parties in Argentina and Mexico. Other reason why, because we decided to work with Argentina, Brazil, and Mexico is because the measures each country adopted to contain the spread of the virus included different levels of restrictions. And also the states developed different strategies to address the new needs and problems associated with digital rights that emerged during the advance of COVID-19 pandemic. We carried out a comparative analysis of the measures that affected digital rights and freedom of expression, access, and privacy implemented by 3 types of players in these 3 countries. The three type of players are governments and private companies, that is ISPs and internet intermediaries, or I would say social media on the one hand. And we also studied reactions from civil society and international organizations on the other hand. The theoretical approach that we developed comes from human rights provisions about progressive and regressive policy making. This principle of progressiveness for protection of human rights appears on the American Convention on Human Rights, in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, as well as in documents of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights of the OAS. The principle of progressiveness refers to the adoption of measures to promote the full exercise of human rights progressively and implies its opposite, non-regressiveness, which prevents states from adopting measures that worsen the situation of rights enjoyed by the population. So, what are the main findings of our research? We broadly summarized, in this presentation, I would broadly summarize the progressive and regressive measures adopted by these different players regarding digital rights of access, freedom of expression and information, and privacy. Each of these rights is also affected by different type of problems caused by governments and or internet and telecommunication companies. And these problems have to do with connectivity, geolocation of patients, content removal, disinformation, among others. What we may say about public policies or about measures taken by states. Public policies adopted during COVID-19 pandemic varied in these three different countries. They have included some regressive measures, such as the official spread of disinformation in the three countries, the promotion of self-censorship and surveillance, but also it also introduced some progressive measures, sometimes in association with civil societies organizations, such as those aimed at guaranteeing access to connectivity and online content through zero rating offers. Regarding internet companies, these companies develop regressive strategies. At the beginning, they develop regressive strategies globally, which in certain cases, such as the spread of fake news, automatic censorship, or the sale of personal data from video conferencing platforms, they had to reverse, offer explanations, and provide alternative solutions. In relation to ISPs, they form alliance with governments and adopted some measures that contributed to the expansion of rights with temporary measures, such as the ones that I already mentioned, such as zero rating content and the establishment of a minimum service plan to maintain the conditions of access to information, to services and communication. What happened with civil society organizations? Well, the civil society in each country tried to influence governments so that they would promote progressive solutions. In some cases, it was able to offer alternative solutions such as data fact-checking, community internet networks, or free software, video conference platforms, and open access agreements. To conclude, in situations of risk, exceptional measures are taken that can set an adverse precedent, such as surveillance practices, public and private censorship. However, they also bring the opportunity to build progressive, viable, and sustainable alternatives, such as exceptional zero-rating practices to guarantee access to teleeducation, community internet solutions, or free software. The crisis is also a fertile ground for debating digital rights from a multi-stakeholder approach that considers inputs from all the players involved with a much broader social scope. It is up to social activism, private companies' cooperation, and state decisions to transform this adverse situation into a window of opportunity to guarantee human rights. Thank you very much for your attention, and if you are interested, I can share the article where you can find all these measures that I broadly mentioned analyzed in detail.
so much, Anna. Yeah, I'm sure that we would like you to share the article with the others. Let's go now to Chile with Cristobal Benavides. He's the Dean of the School of Communication of the University of Los Andes, and he's also a scholar in media economics and expert in engagement. Cristobal, are you around? Here we are. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
Hello. I'm very happy to participate in once and again here in the IMMAA events conference. So I'm happy to share with you the thoughts about engagement in newsroom and media. So I will start talking about. I will want to read a quote from A.G. Salzberg, the chairman and publisher of the New York Times. When he assumed as the leader of the New York Times, in his welcome address, he stated that a dangerous confluence of forces threatens the central role of the press in helping people to understand and interact with the world around them. The business model, which long supported the hard, expensive work of original reporting, is eroding, forcing organizations of all shapes and sizes to downsize their staff and ambitions. Misinformation is increasing, and trust in the media is decreasing as technology platforms elevate clickbait, rumor, and propaganda over real journalism. While the New York Times has managed to weather the economic crisis that affect the industry, New York Times has 8 million of subscribers. 7 million of them is digital products consumer, and 5.3 news applications, and the rest in cooking and games. So they are facing this crisis very well. Thousands of news media around the world have seen how audience and the advertising are running away to another kind of offering. Not of the traditional or mainstream media are consuming now other kind of product and contents. So some authors call this the frustration phase. For many years, they are trying to avoid the flight of their audience to the other places. I'm not talking about the flight of academic to be present in a conference. We are hoping to start flying again and to meet this event like this in person. I'm talking about how people are going to another platforms and what kind of problems there are having because of that. And I think COVID, looking the top of the glass, not of the half of the glass in the top, not of the half of the glass in the bottom. COVID could be an opportunity to reinvent people, because certain routines were modified in the quarantinas, and the consumption of different platforms are increased. Podcast, streaming, like Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, etc. But also many more people are searching for and demanding for good information. So maybe here is an opportunity for the mainstream media and the news organization to reconnect with people. But what kind of content are demanding people? In which platform are demanding? As José told in his presentation, they're thinking about TikTok, they're thinking about Instagram, they're thinking of news websites, podcasts of news. I don't know, in many kind of products or platforms. When, where, how are they doing? And we have to say that for many years, many mainstream companies use just information as such age, gender, income, education, etc., to analyze their audience. Today, that isn't enough. Nowadays, it's needed a more detailed knowledge of users and their relations with media and news products. So there's a challenge for the mainstream companies to starting to searching about what the people thoughts, their interests, and what, how, and when they consume. So here is where I connect with engagement. Some media companies have launched engagement departments with the purpose of strengthening the identification and emotional attitude of people between audience and journalistic content. So what we can mean about by engagement: involvement, commitment, passion, enthusiasm, absorption, dedication, etc. Social networking sites accelerate the news company's decision to start incorporating this type of metrics. A professor of Northwestern, Bobby Calder, that is a professor of Kellogg from the marketing department, shows that engagement with media context increases advertising effectiveness. So another important thing we have to recognize that Google, Facebook, and Amazon are collecting about the 70% of the global resources of digital advertising income. So we need to be more effective in catching that advertising money that is moving around the market. But also it is demonstrated that engagement is connected to positive experience that generate proactive, interactive, and a highly satisfactory relationship between the audience and the media and news brands. So another important thing of engagement is to knowing in deep media audience, so can be a predictive tool that allows and helps in anticipating how changes introduced in the offer that will affect the consumption of that media and news products. Philip Napoli is a well-known scholar in searching and writing a lot of books about audience and also of engagement. 10 years ago, he anticipated that engagement will involve better understanding of the interests and aspiration and expectation of people and audience. So engagement demands that media and news organization involve people in the whole process of the production, not as a passive subjects, by the contrary, as agents who give value to the content, to the product. They give their opinion, the feedback. This doesn't mean that news corporation only give what people want. We must tell what people need. So, but what they need, how they need, is one of the most important things nowadays. I'm trying to connect that with the engagement that your product, your brand, your content is producing in people. Some authors use some neologism about producers, like people who produce video and share it with the media companies, prosumers, who promote some reputation and information offerings for other people that also are connected with brands of media companies, and users, who comment on video, podcast, or text what we are producing. So another type of news organization also are creating a new position is editors, who are only exclusive and dedicated to audience-oriented, and their mission is to know in detail the behavior and performance, the preference, and the opinion. So that is a match quantification and analysis of audience data. The thing is nowadays with a lot of technological tools, there are greater and better possibilities and opportunity to design more sophisticated metrics that are tailored to the needs of the organization, not just a metric that will be useful for everybody. So, instead of creating your own metrics to tailor what are your needs, what are your thoughts, what are your strategic plan for the future. So I'm expecting then some questions and to start and the conversation with all of you people talking about engagement and news and meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Cristobal. That's many things to think. The last speaker we have is my colleague, Javier Francisco Perez Latre, from the School of Communication of the University of Navarra. Francisco is the head of the Media Management Masters and some other masters the university have. Kiko, Francisco, that's your turn. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mercedes, and thank you also to the organizers at the International Media Management Academic Association, especially Castulus and his team that have been organizing this meeting so thoroughly. I'm also very pleased to see so many friends among the audience, and I cannot say hello to all of them, but I'm very pleased to be here. I think my words are going to be a bit complementary to what the previous people have been talking about. José, Ana, and Cristobal have all touched upon very interesting issues that concern the media and journalism in this time. I'll take the vantage point of management to try to draw some ideas and lessons I've been reflecting upon since the start of the pandemic. In March 2020, the world and our lives were really shaken by COVID-19, one of those unique events that occur 2 or 3 times in a lifetime. 18 months later, we are happy to see the vaccination progressing, but we're still far from seeing the defeat of a virus that is potentially transformative. And I don't want to be exhaustive, but I think that some learnings and discoveries emerge from this time. The first is that I think we are fragile. Despite all the scientific advance, our lives are still hanging by a thread, and we are far from having things under control. I think that we have to keep thinking about it because embracing vulnerability is really a source of enrichment. I think that the coronavirus crisis is not a crisis for arrogant managers. And oftentimes, those who believed they had all the answers all had to backtrack wave after wave. But I think there is a bigger management lesson in there. Humility makes us better. And I would even say that we can only trust those who know how to recognize their limitations. A healthy effect of that growing vulnerability, in my opinion, is that today we talk more about mental health in a more open way, also in companies, and certainly in the media world too. So fragility would be the first. The second is that at the same time, I was just talking about mental health, but I see that effort and difficulties also help us to be better. Much is learned from hardships, from stress, from problems. So without losing compassion in the face of suffering, it is advisable to maintain the levels of effort and preserve a virtue that is very classic, the virtue of strength, of fortitude. It is necessary to leave the comfort zone and sometimes opt for the difficult, always striving for higher goals and avoiding conformity despite difficulties. The number 3 lesson may be related to technology. I don't think that technology is ever the solution, but it is a great help. In fact, when the coronavirus arrived, the technology was in a difficult moment. There were a lot of criticisms and doubts about its impact. But in these months, we've seen that technology has been an ally to prevent our world from stopping. We've been able to teach. We've been able to share research. We are doing this today, which is almost a miracle, and it's working very well. And technology is our friend. And the digital transformation is really here to stay. It has also exposed some productivity issues. If you allow me a little joke in this session, where we're talking about serious stuff, it has exposed all those meetings that probably could have been emails instead. So our thinking about productivity is changing, and our thinking about what it means to be in the office is changing, and all those developments are very interesting to keep thinking about. I'm also very interested about the future of planning. What is the future of planning when we know that it is not possible to plan everything? And when even we know that we have to make plans knowing that it is very likely that those plans won't take ever place. It is difficult to live with that degree of uncertainty. But we see agility and flexibility on the rise. And actually, we don't know well how long this crisis is going to last. And we don't know well yet how we will get out of it. At the same time, we also see that those that had the ability to do some planning, even provisional planning, were better equipped to deal with change. Probably it's an interesting time for scenario planning. For example, I was just reading a very interesting book. It's called The Big Nine. It's 2 years old, more or less, by Amy Webb. And she's talking about artificial intelligence. And she talks about 3 scenarios. She says, there is a positive scenario, optimistic. There is a pragmatic scenario, which is the one she thinks is more likely. And then there is a catastrophic scenario. So maybe this idea of scenario planning is an interesting idea to continue working on in the next months. The next issue, of course, and you've been discussing it a little bit, is related to trust. We've seen the pandemic accelerate the spread of rumors, incomplete accounts, and state lies at a time where trusted information was a matter of life and death for people and for businesses. I think that the media have not been always able to measure up to the situation by contrasting the news. Sometimes speed has overcome precision. And of course, the political class that sometimes is more eager to distribute blame and to please than to solve problems. I don't think that has had his highest hour either. In any event, I think that one of the great questions we face in our time is, who can I trust? Can I trust this institution? Can I trust this media outlet? Can I trust this journalist? That is one of the key issues. And I'm happy to see that there is a lot of media management research on that going on. At least in the first live conference I've been able to attend in Sweden, that was a major topic that were discussed. I'm also very interested about the local paradox. I think that the pandemic has been very global. It has been intense in almost all parts of the world in the different waves, north, east, south, and west. And it really opens up to the world because we've been following very closely what is happening overseas. For example, today in Spain, our media are opened by the news in Austria. So, and that's a very positive development, I think, because we are concerned about what's happening beyond our borders. But at the same time, COVID is a very local disease that places us in our communities and changes our closest behaviors. And I think it is a great opportunity for local content. I think that is going to be very interesting to watch how this apparent global local paradox unfolds. Point number 7, I think, is very obvious. I was very happy to see what Anna was saying, because really we can't do anything alone. We've seen during the pandemic to what extent we depend on others, and teamwork and collaboration helped us to get us out of the catastrophe. And it reminded us that we are a community in a very powerful way. So in a way, I think that the sort of individualistic fallacy vanishes because we are solidary, mysteriously solidary. And that's something very important to also to keep in mind. Finally, and believe it or not, I've been following 8, so this is the 8th. I think that only hope awakens the best energies and helps to summon other people in difficult circumstances. So I think that I'm a bit with Cristobal and also with José, because it's time to join the group of those who see the bottle half full. And pessimism is not going to help us out of this one. So vulnerability, fortitude, trust, agility, globalization, solidarity, technology, hope. In the midst of so many difficulties and personal tragedies, opportunities for management learning have not been lacking. And I've just done a little bit of what could be a research agenda to think about these issues in the following months. And we will need to continue thinking and investigating. So to think, what will the next world be like? But maybe we are not yet in post-pandemic times. So, you know, we've been talking since September about the next normal, but I'm not sure we're in the next normal yet. So thank you all for listening, and of course, looking forward to all the questions and comments you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Francisco. Now I think we have time for discussion to open the questions from the public. I think we should use the chat, and I can read the questions. And hearing Kiko talking about technology, I agree with him, but that's true that technology doesn't work without the human help. No, and in this forum, apart from the work from Castulus, the work from his team, especially in the technical things, has been essential. Otherwise, we couldn't be here, we couldn't hear us, we couldn't see each other. So, well, the floor is open for questions, but while the public is getting ready or is thinking their questions, I would like to make one to Cristobal. I have some others for the rest of the speakers. But hearing you, Cristobal, and knowing that you are the Dean of a School of Communication, as we are, and our expertise is to try to educate future news professionals or professionals working in communication, what we should to do in the School of Communication, media schools, to help the audience to bring an interesting and rich feedback, participation, and so on in the media, well, in general, in the media. Because, I mean, it's very easy to talk about listening to the audience or look at their needs, but sometimes the audience, the public, is not ready to know what they want to, or is not ready to to bring opinions or ideas that can help the public debate. And probably we have to think also as media schools, how are we going to deal with this other part of the public we have to teach? I mean,
Thank
the
you,
question is
Mercedes.
for Cristobal, but probably the rest of you have thought a lot about it.
Thank you, Mercedes. First of all, I think now and ever, good content. We need good content to get a match with the audience. If we don't have good content, it's impossible to do it. Maybe we could do some managerials or management activities, efforts, but if we don't have good content, it's possible. And Kiko said, I think that is a clue for the good content. Now we must think about globalization. So globalization and content. Nowadays, the barriers of country disappear in terms of consumption. So Narcos, that is from Mexico, or I don't know, the serie Luis Miguel, the singer from Mexico is watching in Spain, maybe in Argentina, in Santiago, maybe, I don't know, in Russia, in Germany, I don't know. So we must to focus on the education of people that think in terms of global opportunities, not just thinking in local opportunities. I think that one thing. Another thing is innovation. One of the problem of the mainstream companies and news corporate companies, very few of them are trying new ways of communication with people. Talking about the New York Times, the Washington Post, I don't know, The Economist, or BBC, etc., are the good examples, but are many others that are not doing. I'm exaggerating, as always the professors do. We are always exaggerating that as to our students understand better what we want to do. And many of them are doing nothing. How many? The other day, a student here interviewed the journalist in charge of TikTok of the Washington Post. And in that conversation, he told that he thought that few media companies are trying TikTok and connect with news. And now I connect with innovation theory or innovation literature that said how many companies try one and again and they're not afraid about the failure of that innovation, because if they are reduced to some just few failures, many times you will be making okay and trying and not just to sit down and watching past the opportunities in front of your eyes. So I think good content, globalization, innovation, and to ring hand with the profession. That I think that is one of the things that we must concentrate in education, the future people that will be changing the media environment of our countries. I know that Kiko and he's moving his head because we have a lot of conversation about the things. So,
Kiko, do you want to add?
Yeah, just I would add something very, very quick. Really, we have a problem, and I'm sure that Jose and Ana have also many things to say about this. And that is that really media companies are not leading innovation. Innovation is being led by Google, by Facebook, by Amazon, by Spotify, by Netflix. We don't see really our sector being at the forefront of innovation, and that's a problem. We have to work on that. We need to improve that record, because otherwise it's going to be very difficult to build in the type of considerations socially that media companies are traditionally able to build in, and that probably robots do not have. So, and those companies are really led by engineers and people that are not so concerned about content and about and maybe about the social fabric. So I think that we have to keep that in mind.
Jose, Ana, do you want to add something else?
Just a brief comment. Sorry, Jose, do you want me to say something? Okay. Just a brief comment on what Francisco said. He just mentioned about innovation on behalf of traditional media, with a group of colleagues from Universidad de Quilmes and Universidad de Buenos Aires in Argentina. We've been working about new business strategy, on a book about Clarín Group, which is a major group in Argentina. The book has a broad scope, but one of the things it addresses has to do with new business models and innovation. And what we could find there is that they are working on introducing algorithm and I don't know the exact word of programmatic advertising. I'm not sure if that's a word in English, but they are working on that kind of tools of automatic intelligence, using the same tools that these global platforms use. So, I agree with Francisco that traditional media are not leading innovation, but they are trying to to measure up to. So that's the case that I can mention, the case of Clarín.
Mm-hmm. Jose?
Thank you. I'm going to say just as I think for our context, for Latin American context, and especially for Mexican context, there is the gap between the informed society and a society that doesn't have enough money to get quality information. And must spend their money in what they think it's more valuable for their lives. Second, innovation as media companies and content companies trying to respond to Kiko is for media companies and content companies, innovation must be in reconstructing trust and regaining readers. I think we sometimes confuse innovation with technology innovation, with digital innovation, but there is a lot of social innovation that we as media companies and content producers and journalists must work for. And I think that it's a terrible error to work for platforms as Cristobal said, citing some of his students. We don't have to work for platforms under the rules, under their algorithms. We must work for readers. We must work for our customers, for the news customers. We must fight this idea that platforms are the new editors-in-chief. And now, if I would like to read Maria Elena's slides, if
Yes.
if I can do it,
Yeah,
I think.
please, Jose. Yes.
Thank you very much. I think the slides of Maria Elena give a lot of political context of Mexico's situation.
Mercedes, maybe you try. It's a question of Michael.
Yeah, we can go while Tino is trying to help me. Yeah, we have here a question of Michael. Thank you, Michael. That's a not easy question, but that's a really core question nowadays. What can be done to combat the rise of misinformation and the public consumption of it?
I can tell we have now 3 months ago we start a program with a media company here. It's a multi-platform media company that have news websites, also have a radio, public radio, also a radio and podcast, and we built a fact-checking program together. So I think we can combat the rise of misinformation and the public consumption is how universities are getting involved, not just in the education of future professionals in the area, that also get involved in specific projects that can make some forces and make some efforts to combat the misinformation and the public consumption of it. So this has been 3 months of hard work, but I think from the News Corporation and from our school, we're very happy about the results because we're not seeing that in the entire public as students are starting to change some routines about how they do their work, but also from the feedback that we're getting from the people, from the audience, also from the social site networks that the media manage. So I think one key is that university and school get involved, not just researching about that thing, also get involved with the hands and specific and practical projects that way to get some lights and resolve some problems in the societies that were get involved in our countries, in our towns, in our city, etc.
I would like to provide a few examples that has to do with what Cristobal just mentioned. Some examples of good practices related to the question. First of all, there are fact-checking organizations around the world. One of them is the International Fact-Checking Network. So especially related to the coronavirus pandemic, it did a phenomenal work in terms of fact-checking. Also in Argentina, we had the Argentine State News Agency, which is called TELAM, launched the information checking platform that is called Confiar in Spanish, Trust. And it also did a very good work checking information. And we could also, I can also name another example of what I think it's a good practice of fact-checking. That was led by a group of researchers of the National Research Council in Argentina that refuted more than 100 of fake news about coronavirus in the context of a project called Ciencia Anti-Fake News, Science Anti-Fake News. So I think those experiences of fact-checking led by universities, civil society organizations, teaming up with trusted media, trusted traditional media, and also funds provided by these global platforms are good examples of good practices on how to address disinformation.
Thank you, Anna. We can tell from our school that there is a European project funded by the European Union called eVerifier, that is a consortium between Spain and Portugal to research about disinformation, to have identified the fact checkers and the work done by these organizations. And one of the parts of that project has very much to do with media literacy, in order also to educate the public, the audience, to identify fake news, disinformation, and to react against this information, and probably to take into account the help of their own platforms to do that. It could help to have a healthy information around the social media and the media we have. Tino is telling me that if two of you disappear from the front, maybe we can share the slides from Mexico, that I think that can help very much to understand which is the relationship between power, politics, and media. Jose, I think you can now share them. You are muted.
Yes, I can share the slides.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. So I'm going to share Maria Elena's Gutierrez Renteria slides. It's a pleasure to me, and thank you very, very much to all of you to accept this kind of presentation. Can you see it, the presentation right now?
Yes.
Okay, very much. Thank you very much. So I begin. This is the presentation of my professor, Maria Elena Gutierrez Renteria. It's a pleasure to me to read it. I think this presentation has a lot of context on political and economic context of Mexican society right now. We have a young society. Right now is the young people dominates the population of country. There is a media market concentration. This is a typical form of concentration in Latin America. It's not exclusive of Mexico, but we have a few families controlling the media landscape. But there are new players in the market, new digital native media that are doing things different to change the landscape and are motivated big media players to change their ways to do business in Mexico, business and content and journalism. Mexico is one of the 6 countries markets for advertisers in America Latina, Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Peru, and Mexico. Mexico is characterized by attacking freedom of the press. We are the most dangerous country for the journalism. The main problems facing Mexican media during the pandemic. 1, a polarized society, economic contraction, and effects of COVID-19. Frequent attacks from the President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, who accuses the media of unfair coverage and corruption. Traditional media face audience polarization and fragmentation, declining advertising revenue, and the need to respond to digital shifts in consumer habits. And 4, digital-born media face, decreased advertising revenue and vulnerability in their business models, marketing, and revenues. What are the learnings that stay relevant? 1, the vulnerability of the Mexican industry by having most of its revenue concentrated in some advertisers. 2, the importance of understanding Mexican audiences in the current digital environment. 3, the need for Mexican society to receive information through media professionals and the value of journalism. And 4, the need to work on business models of media firms, traditional media and digital-born media, editorial, marketing, and revenues. And what are the opportunities for scholars in the field? Maria Elena Gutierrez Renteria said, 1, stimulate the media economics and media management research with media professionals. Maybe what Maria Elena and I are doing right now. 2, develop a multifactorial market research that helps to understand Mexican audiences. And 3, identify the main barriers to entry into the Mexican media industry and the core business strategies for media firms in the current digital economy environment, macro and microeconomics. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jose. Mexico is a very special country with a very specific figures, but I think the scheme is repeated in many other countries in some senses.
Yes, right now when I listen to Ana saying about, and you and yourself saying about this need to educate the audience to identify disinformation and fake news, I thought on United States, on UK, on a lot of countries that are facing the same problems with the information that people gets and can read and consume.
Yeah. We have a question in the Q&A that comes from Castulus. What did we learn for competencies in academic media management education that were somehow overlooked in the past and should be emphasized in the future, given the experiences of the pandemic? I think that as educators, we have to think very much in our teaching, because we can't teach as we did before. That's for sure. Francisco, I think you have any answer for that?
Well, it's a very interesting topic, and actually, I have to say that Castulus has done himself some work about it, so he probably should jump in and also say some things. But my main takeaway is that I think that in the past, especially business schools, have been teaching proven models. So in a way, things that were working in the past and that were able to be repeated again and again and would be successful. Now, what we're seeing now is a situation where proven models are going to be difficult for. It's unlikely that they will be working. So I think that a lot more emphasis has to be done on creative teaching, on teaching people to decide under difficult situations. So I think that the creative component of teaching is very much underlined by this, but we have learned in these 2 years. So I don't know how all the others feel about it, but for me it's very clear that we are not going to be in the position to be telling people what will happen with our teaching. So it's going to be in a situation where the need for students to participate and come up with solutions themselves is going to be more and more important.
I agree with Kiko, and I want to add we need to teach flexibility to adapt to scenarios more quickly than we're doing years ago, and also to put in practice what we are teaching about media management. We are teaching, I don't know, marketing, innovation, creativity, for the student to make the match what we're teaching about in theory, they can put it in practice. I think it would be a great challenge for us because they just not assimilating concept, theoretical concept, so they can now put it in practice and working together with media company and brands in testing that things. I think it's learning based on experience, learning based on projects, so we can connect theory and practice in media management. I think that is very important.
Yeah, I think that sometimes we tell the media that they should listen to audiences, but some professors sometimes are very poor listeners. So ourselves. so I think that all the things we do to engage the students are going to be increasingly important. And sometimes in the digital environment we live in, often the students are the teachers for us. So I think that that's something that should be very much incorporated in the ways we teach.
Yes, and how Maria Elena is writing in the chat to connect with people and to teach with our students that the business side is not the enemy. Here in Latin America, is the wall between the editorial side and the management side is very it's very strong. So we must teach the student that we must connect and work together from both sides.
In this sense, I think that to bring to the classroom professionals that have been working on media and telling the students how important is to build and to find and to write contents related to audiences problems, and also to understand the business of the companies and to understand the companies where they work as organizations. I think that is a way very convincing for the students, because then they see people that they are very attractive for them because they are using to hear them or to follow them, and also to hear them talking about the business, the incomes, the company problems. I think that this has been, as always actually, that it's been very interesting. Jose, Ana, if you want to share your own experience or your thoughts about how to teach media management and how to convince the students that to understand the markets is also important for them.
What I can share my experience, not so much about media management, but from media economics, media policy and economics. What I can say about that is that, I mean, I agree with Francisco and Cristobal that we need to be creative. We need to teach our students how to be creative, and we also, I firmly believe about this idea of the multi-stakeholder approach, the need of enabling dialogue between academia, private sector, and the state on how to address, on the importance of media economics to enable rights. Right? I'm not sure if I make myself understand on that, but the thing is that I think what COVID pandemic put in our face is, at least in Latin America, that we have serious problems in terms of access, in terms of digital divide. So in this sense, media had also to contribute in terms of education, because in some areas, not only in my country, in Argentina, but in Latin America in general, they don't have internet access. So traditional media, broadcasting, traditional television and radio has had to include educational content in order to be able to continue with classes. So in this sense, I think one of the lessons of this COVID pandemic is that the need of this multi-stakeholder dialogue in order to think about economics, but how economics can enable rights.
Yeah, that's a good point. Jose, would you like to add
Yes.
something?
Thank you. I agree very much with Anna. I think I'm not a scholar, I'm not a teacher, I'm a journalist, and you know, as journalists, we have the hands in the field. I think Anna has the better proportion to my understanding. This is to enable rights, to give people voice, to work for different ideals of economic ideas. I agree with Kiko and Cristobal that we have to teach the next generations of media professionals to know the business. But I think as we have media specializations, no, you have the people, the commercial people, the sales people. I think we must work for this specialization for media business people and journalists and media creators, and we have to differentiate the specializations. I think sometimes we think this entrepreneurial context for media, something like neoliberalism concept, no, the self-entrepreneur, and I don't know. As a journalist, I don't agree with that idea totally.
Yeah, let me put it this way. I think that we have to teach a business, but this business is also a social business. So for us, let's say that the market is necessary, but it is not enough, and that should be built in the business, because otherwise we are talking about something that doesn't exist in our case. So I think that is a type of business, but it is a unique business, and we have to recognize its uniqueness.
That's a good point. Okay, we are almost at the end of the topic. I have to thank all the speakers with their time, their presentations. It's been very, very inspiring, I think. So thank you very much. We are in a globalized world, and here is a globalized topic. We are in the different parts of the world, and tomorrow we'll be together. A very rare schedule, at least from Europe, because it will be Saturday and we have to meet at 8 in the morning. But just because we are in a globalized topic, and forum, so we need to adapt our timetable. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to meet you, all of you, and thank you for all the public that is there, though we haven't seen them, but we have read them. Thank you very much, and thank you, the organizers.
Thank you, pleasure.
Bye. 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 Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
A pleasure.
Bye. Thank you.